second. Okay.
Cool, cool. All right, so today we're gonna be making tic-tac-toe. Before we start, I have this little whiteboard app. I wanna draw what we're gonna be making. So, see if this works. Oh God. My pen is not working, so I'll just use my mouse. Our tic-tac-toe board is gonna look like this, right? Everyone's seen a tic-tac-toe board. And we have, I drew this wrong. We have 9 spots. So pretend this doesn't exist. There we go. So we have 9 spots, and then we can replace each spot with an X or a no. And if someone gets 30 in a row, you win. Pretty simple stuff. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna implement something very simple in the console right here. So if you've never used Python before, if you have no idea what the heck you're looking at, basically the way it works is you can think of the left-hand side, which is a script. This is a set of instructions. So you're kind of making like a to-do list. And then on the right-hand side, this is the console. So there's this thing called the compiler. And basically what it's gonna do is just go through your to-do list and do all those things in the order that you told it to do them. So if we press run, then it's gonna run. And then if you output anything, then it'll be on the right-hand side right here. So just to give you an example, if I wanna print something to the console, I'll just say, I'm printing something. And then I run, we'll see it on the right-hand side right here. Cool, cool, all right. Let's talk about a little bit of the theory before we get into tic-tac-toe. How is this exactly gonna work? So first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna set up the board. We need to draw it, and then we need to set up everything we're gonna need to play the game. And then the way it's gonna work is it's gonna infinitely loop until the game is done. So there's 2 ways you can end the game. The players can either agree they don't wanna play anymore, and they let us know. So in this case, they'll tell us they don't wanna play anymore, and we'll stop the loop. Or what they can do is win. So if someone wins, we wanna get out of this loop. Otherwise, we're gonna continuously draw the board and then update the board based on whatever input the player gives us. So we're gonna let them enter the numbers 1 through 9. So if we go back to the whiteboard right here, we're gonna take in the numbers 1 through 9 and we'll replace it with the X or an O. So for example, if player 1 presses 1, then this will become an X, my bad. And if they press 2, this will become an O. And we're just gonna replace the numbers with X's and O's. And if someone gets 3 in a row, the game is over. Okay, so how are we gonna do this in Python? So first thing we're gonna wanna do is make a dictionary. So if you never used a dictionary anymore, the concept isn't too hard. If you are familiar, I know some of you are familiar with C++. So the equivalent of a dictionary in C++ is a map. But basically what it does is you just give it some sort of key and you get something back. So an example would be, let's say you go onto like a UCR database and you enter your student ID number, then it gives you back all the information about whoever's student ID number is. So from here, let's say I enter my ID number, then I get my name, I can get, what year I am, all this information. So it'll all be here. So it's a quick way to reference something. So this is what we're gonna do to make our game board. We're gonna make a dictionary. We're gonna call it spots. And then we're just gonna set all the numbers from 1 through 9. And then their associated key, which is how we're gonna access them, is just gonna be the number 1 through 9. Now I wanna emphasize the difference here. So here we don't have quotes, while here we have quotes. So what does this mean? If you're familiar with data types, this would be an integer, while this is what's known as a string or a character. In layman's terms, you can think of this without the quotes. This is the quantity 1. So like the actual number that you could add or subtract or do anything like that. This is literally the symbol 1. So if you were reading a book and the number 1 was in the book, it's the equivalent of seeing that symbol. But we don't do math with the symbol. It's just a way to reference 1, if that makes any sense. If that doesn't, please let me know and I'll try to clear it up. But otherwise, this way it's gonna work is that we're gonna access whatever place the person picks, and we're gonna change the symbol to either X or O, depending on what player they are. So we're going to need to do a couple things. We're going to need to keep track of which players are which, and then we're going to need to create a loop to take care of this. So we'll start with our loop. And I have the code right here, so I can just copy paste it. That way I know it's correct, and I try to avoid too many errors, but we might still get some anyways. So let's start with our loop. We're going to want to use a while loop. Is everyone here? I don't think everyone's taken a course, but does anyone here not know what a loop is? Feel free to just post a 1 in the chat if you don't know what a loop is. Otherwise, I'll just, let's see. Is there a 1 in the chat? For some reason, it won't let me see.
Yeah, there's
okay.
one.
Yeah, there's a couple.
So all a loop is it's basically, I'll go back to my diagram. It just basically is like a chunk of instructions. And then that chunk of instructions continuously runs until some condition is met. So in this case, we're gonna have this chunk right here. This will keep going until we tell it to stop. And you'll see how we tell it to stop. So to do that, we're gonna create while. So this tells Python that we're making a loop. And the way Python works is it keeps track of your indents. So anything that is tabbed like this will be inside this loop. So you can consider it part of like the loop chunk. So we'll say while playing. So up here we have this is a Boolean variable. So if you ever taken a true or false test before, it's basically that. It's either true or false. It can't be anything else, just one or the other. And we're starting with setting it equal to true because we're assuming if whoever runs our program runs it, they want to play our game. So once we do that, we will enter our loop. Now we don't want our loop to run forever. We want it to end when the player tells us to. So how are we going to do that? First, we need to get some input from the player. To do that, we're going to use this little thing right here. It's called input. And what it's literally going to do is it's just going to get whatever the player gives us on the console. I'll show you right here. If they give us a Q, then that's going to be the player telling us they don't want to play the game anymore. And we're going to set playing to false. So then nothing in this loop will run anymore. So it'll keep running. And then if playing is set to false, then it'll start from here. So let me just run that and I can show you what it looks like. So right now, all we can do is we can enter something. So for example, I'm going to enter Y, nothing happens. I'm going to enter R, nothing happens. But if I enter Q, then the thing ends. And if you want to try it yourself, feel free. So that's how we're going to exit our game loop. Now, what would happen if we didn't have this is there would be no way to exit the loop and our computer would freak out. And we don't want that. That's bad. Okay, cool. So we got our input from the player, but there's nothing on the screen and we need a way to draw the board. So I don't want everything to really get too cluttered into this one file. So I'm going to create another file and we're going to call it helper.py. And we're in here, what I'm going to do is create some helper functions. So if you don't know what a function is, it's very similar to, I imagine everyone here has taken high school algebra. You put it in X and you get out a Y. That's all a function is we're going to create something that takes in some input, does some stuff with that input, and then gives it back. So I'll show you what that looks like right now. First thing we're going to do is we want a way to draw the board. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy paste the function, and then while everyone types it, I will explain what's happening here. So this is our function to draw the board. And what we're doing is we're using what's called an F string. And all an F string is just, so we have two data types that we're really concerned about. We have numbers and then we have text. But then we also have these variables right here. And what we can do is we can change these variables. Specifically with this dictionary, I had mentioned before that we're going to be changing these 1s and 2s to X's and O's. So we can't just put 1, 2, 3 on the board statically, or else they'll never change. We need a way to make sure that if we change the dictionary, it also changes the board. So to do that, we're going to use an F string. And that just lets you combine variables and strings together. So anything in the bracket is a variable. Anything out, well, I guess the curly brace, anything in the curly brace is a variable, and that's just subject to change. So for example, my text right here is, we have this bar, and then right here we have 1. So if we go into our dictionary, and to access something from your dictionary, you use brackets. So if we do bracket 1 bracket, then it's going to go into our dictionary. It's going to look up, okay, what's 1? It's just the character 1, and it's going to fill it in here. And just so you can see, I'm going to go ahead and let me import it real quick, and then I'll leave it up so everyone can draw it. So to get this function, because we have it in a different file, we have to grab it. So we're going to do from helper import drawboard. We don't need that. And this will just let Python know that we want the function drawboard from this file helper.py. So if I go ahead and do it here, so we'll do drawboard. Oh, earlier I had mentioned that we have a function. It should take in an input and give us something back. Or not, it doesn't have to give us something back, but it should definitely take in an input. And right here, our input is going to be the dictionary we made. So we're going to throw this in there. So if I run this, what should happen is I see the board. Cool. And like I had mentioned, what we want to happen is we want these to be able to change. So just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to change this 1 to a G. And we see G right here. Cool. So that's working. I'm going to go ahead and leave it here for a little bit, just so everyone can type it out if you don't already have it. Do I have any questions? I know I'm moving a little fast. So feel free to slow me down if anyone has any questions at all.
Well, does the def define the variable type, and what kind of variable is this specific? Is this like just a string or?
Yeah, so I'm guessing you're coming from a C++ background where you have to tell it that what kind of variable it is. In Python, Python is beautiful in that it figures it out for you. So you don't have to tell it anything. It'll do it, all the work behind the scenes. So all you have to do is do def. This tells Python that you're making a function. And then you give it the function name. And then you put the input in here. And if you want to give something back, then you do what's called a return statement. And I'll show you that a little later. So my answer to your question specifically is you don't got to worry about it. Python will handle it for you.
Also, is that /n like an end line?
Yeah, so this /n just tells it to go to the next line. So right here, we don't want it to be all in a row. We want it to go to the next line to keep drawing the board. So I do this /n, and then it goes down to the next line and does 4, 5, 6.
What's the function again?
So this is a F string, and what it lets you do is it lets you put variables inside your string. So anything inside the curly brace is a variable.
How do you grab like a integer then? Because you just put like the numbers 1 through 9.
How would I grab an integer?
And it grabs like the character from your dictionary, right?
Yeah, so right here, this isn't read in as a string, it's read in as an integer. So then,
oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything in here you can consider code if you want to think of it like that. You can mix string and code.
Interesting.
It's pretty useful. One of the cool things you can do with Python. Any other questions? Feel free to ask. Okay. We'll come back here. So if you haven't finished drawing it, don't worry too much about it for now. So we've done our draw board. What do we need to do next? Well, we need a way for the player to update the board. Because right now the board just keeps getting drawn. So for example, if I press 1, it'll draw the board, but nothing happens. Press 2, nothing happens. The only thing we can really do is stop the program from running. So we're going to want to do 2 things. We're going to want to get input from the player so they can actually mark an X or an O. But we're also going to want to clear the board every time. Because right now what's happening is that every time we enter it, we draw the board. We don't want that to happen. It's a little messy. We're just going to want to make one board at a time. So I'll show you how to do that real quick. Python has built-in functions to let you clear your screen. So we're going to import the OS module. If you don't really know what that means, don't worry too hard about it. Just know that basically what's happening is that Python has ways to let us clear the screen for us. So we don't have to figure out some coding magic to do it. Python did it for us. So if I run this again and I do 1, then we see that we're not printing out again. It goes ahead and clears the screen, and then it prints it out again. So we only have one board that's on the screen, which is pretty cool. If anyone here is interested in animation or any like other type of game design, this is a very important concept. You got to clear the screen every time. So now, like I mentioned, we need a way to get input from the player. So before we mark it as an X or an O, we need a way to tell the churn, because the way tic-tac-toe works is that player 1 is X, player 2 is O. But right now, we don't have a way in our program to know whose turn it is. So we can think of it in the sense that the X players will be odd, and the O players will be even if we start our turn from 1. So turn 1 should be X, turn 2 should be O, even, odd. So let's go ahead and make another function that will let us check the churn. And then I should mention in my main file right here, I have this churn variable. And what we're going to do is every time a valid input is given, we're going to increment this. We're going to start with churn 0, and then we're going to go up from there. So the first valid move should be churn 1. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. And what's going on here? So we have our function check churn with churn in the parentheses. And if you don't have a CS background, I'm guessing you've never seen this modulo operator. So I'm going to go ahead and explain what that is real quick. Go to the whiteboard. I haven't figured out a way how to clear the screen on this, so we have to deal with Control-Zing. So let's talk about division real quick. Quick math, I won't bore you too much. But what does it mean when you say 9 divided by 4? What you're really doing is you're really doing 9 minus 4, which is equal to 5. Is there more than 4? Yeah, okay. 9 minus 4, or sorry, 5 minus 4 is equal to 1. Can we subtract 4 and keep it positive? Nope. Okay, that's it. So what is this value right here? We're going to call this the remainder. So if you did 9 divided by 4, and we're going to assume we're not working with decimals, then you'd get something like this. 2 remainder 1. 4 was able to go into 9 2 times. We were able to subtract it twice, and then we had 1 left over. Now there's a special property about this remainder in that it will actually never be, well, hold on, let me slow down. So anyways, what is the modulo operator? If we do 9 mod 4, then we would get 1. What it's doing is it's basically giving us this. And you can see the modulo operator is this percent sign. It's just giving us the remainder of our division. But there is a special property about this. This number will never be bigger than this number. So if I were to do 9 mod 2, then our answers can only be either 0 or 1. So what it's going to do is it's going to divide by 2 and check to see if there's a remainder. If there's no remainder, the 2 divides it evenly. We're going to say it's even. If it's 1, then it's odd. And if we use this, we can use it to keep track of which churn we should be on. So like I had mentioned, if we're on an even churn, this should be an O. And if we're on an odd churn, this should be X. Does that make sense? Hopefully. Feel free to post in the chat if it doesn't. If you come from a computer, if you don't come from a computer science major, it might be a little weird. So you might need some time to let it sink in, but feel free to ask any questions. Otherwise, we're gonna continue. So let's go back to our code right now. We're gonna take our churn and mod it by 2, and we're gonna get either 0 or 1. So we're gonna check to see if it's even or odd. And then we're gonna use something called a conditional. A conditional, if you've ever played like maybe one of those choose your own adventure books where you go through and you take different paths, that's what a conditional does. We give it a statement, and if that statement is true or false, we take this path versus another path. So this is going to be the even path right here. I'll write it down. Oops. Good habit to get into. If you want to leave comments, you put a hashtag, and Python will not run that code. So it's just text that you can use to reference for yourself. So if we take our current churn and we check to see if it's even or odd, remember 0 is even. If we get 0, so to check that, we're going to do churn mod 2, and then we're going to use 2 equal signs. And this is what's known as the equality operation. It's going to check to see if 2 quantities are equal. We don't want to use 1 equal sign because this is known as the assignment, which basically means this is how you're assigning a variable. So you don't want to get these 2 mixed up. So we're going to check if it's equal to 0, we're going to return. Someone had mentioned earlier about return statements. So if you use a return, that's the output of your function. So you can think of it as the y that you're giving back. So we're going to return O if it's even. And then the way an else statement works, so we check if this is true. If it's not true, then we do this. And we use an else statement to do that. So if this isn't true, it's just going to go right down here. We're going to return an X. If it's not even, then it has to be odd because it has to be even or odd. And we'll go here. Cool. Any questions? If not, I will keep going. Also, if anyone has a hard time typing and keeping up, just let me know and I can go ahead and post the code in the Zoom chat. That makes things a little easier. All right. So let's go back to our game.
Someone's asking if you could do that.
Yeah. Anything in particular? Or should I just throw it all in there and let you have at it?
Do you think it would be easier? You said the first page.
Okay.
Hey, I have an error. Do you think you can explain it for me? I got an error that says for the OS system clear, it says OS not defined. Do you know why I have
that? Did you import it?
Import, yeah.
You should have this import statement at the top.
Oh, I think.
All right, yeah. So if you're getting that error, it's because you didn't do this. Basically, what an import statement is Python has a bunch of functions already built for you, so you don't have to do it yourself. And you're just telling Python you want to use those functions. Okay, I went ahead and posted it in the chat. Hopefully everyone's able to access it. If not, let me know. All right, so we are now going to want to update our board.
Someone made a comment.
Okay.
It's like including libraries in C++.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good. So if you come from a C++ background, this is basically a library. Cool. Okay. So let's go ahead and we can take input from the player. Now what we need to be able to do is increment the churn, and we also need to be able to change it. So if I run this right here, no matter what I type in, I can't change anything on the board. We need to be able to do that. So to do that, we need to make sure that whatever they put is valid. So let me give you an example. Let's say I run the board and I put 10. What's going to happen? Well, we don't have anything stopping them from putting 10. So we're going to get some funky stuff going on. We don't want that to happen, so we're going to have to do some checks. So right here, we're going to use a conditional again. So if they pick Q, if they type Q in the console, that means they don't want to play anymore. We'll stop the whole program. if they put something that's not Q in, then we're going to run some checks and make sure whatever they did put in fits our board. So like I had mentioned, we don't want them to put in 10. So we're going to use this built-in function with Python. It's called isDigit. And what it's going to go through, it's going to check, it's going to go through and check whether or not the number they put in is a number from 0 through 9. So like I said, we don't want them putting in 10. We don't want them putting in A. And if they do put in something that is wrong, what's going to happen is this isn't going to run. So right here, we increment the churn by 1. And then this is where we actually change the spot on the board. So if I run this, I put in 1. Ooh, we haven't defined our other function. But basically what happened is it would change this to X. But because we haven't, because we have a valid input, it would work. If I put something that doesn't work, none of this would happen. And it would just go back to the beginning of the loop and draw the board. So it's only going to change anything when they put in a valid input. So it has to be a digit. It has to be 0 through 9. And then it also has to fall into our dictionary. So string.isDigit will make sure that they can't put in a character like A or a word. But what if they put in 99? Technically, that's still a number. But our board only has 9 spots. So we need to make sure that whatever number they put in is actually in our board. And to do that, this is a very Python way of doing it. We are going to, first, we're going to convert it to a number. So whenever Python reads anything from the console or the user, it always assumes it's a word, but it doesn't assume it's a number. If we put it in this function int and then parentheses, by the way, choice is where we're storing whatever the user gives us, then it'll convert it into a number. So then we can compare it to other numbers. And if we use in spots, it'll go through and make sure that whatever number is in there is actually one of the keys in our dictionary. If it's not, then this is going to return false. And when we use the and right here, it makes sure that both of these statements need to be true. So we can't have one or the other. It has to be either, it has to be both a number and a number from 0 through 9, or 1 through 9. That was kind of a lot. So if anyone has any questions, please let me know. So what's the logic here? If that's correct, they put in a valid input, we're going to increment the churn by 1, and then we're going to replace whatever spot they picked with either an X or an O. So right here, we have our check churn function that we wrote in here, and it's going to give us back an X or an O, depending on whether the churn is even or odd. So to be able to use it, we need to import it, like I imported the draw board function. So we'll input check churn. Oops. Forgive my awful typing. And then when we run this, let's say I put an A, nothing happens because they didn't put it in a valid input. So our game is just going to throw it away, basically. If I put in 1, we get an X. And now we should see in the next turn, we should get an O. So if I put in 2, we get an O. Cool. So right now we can finish playing our game if we want. With 5, 6. What happens if someone puts in 9? We get 3 in a row. But there's no logic in place to tell Python that somebody's won the game. So that's going to be what we want to do next. So let's go ahead and stop this from running. If you want to stop it from running, you just press this little stop, I guess, whatever you want to call it here. And then let's go ahead and make another function. Sorry, just give me 1 second. And this is the function that's going to let us check to see if anybody's won the game. I'm going to go ahead and post it on Zoom too, because it's a little bit of a nasty function. There's a lot going on. So I'm going to go ahead and post it on Zoom so everyone can just copy paste it If you want to write it out, it could be good practice. Go to the chat. Where does the chat open on this?
It's at the top. But someone has a question.
Oh,
Error. Can you go back to like the print board?
yes.
And a syntax error.
Syntax error. Is it in the helper function, Anthony? Like in here? Okay. What is the problem? Can you let me know what the error is by any chance?
Am I supposed to have a quotation marks around board? It's like,
Not around board, just around, so starting after the F and then before this parenthesis right here. So all this is in quotes.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So board is a variable. So we don't use quotation marks, but all of this is text. So we tell Python everything in the quotation marks is text. Does that make sense?
And now I'm getting one for check turn.
Okay.
Yeah,
Do you want to share your screen?
Yeah, sure. Let me.
Okay. Go ahead and stop sharing. By the way, for anyone here, coding is all about debugging. So there's a lot you can learn from going
Hey,
through.
while
and
you're
fixing
sharing a
mistakes.
screen, can you post the other function?
Yeah, let me do that real quick. So, ooh, just went away.
Can you see?
Yeah, I can see.
Okay.
1 second. I'm going to go ahead and post the code that you can all copy paste to check for the win, and then I'll go ahead and explain it after this. Okay. Oh, I see. So remember how I had mentioned that Python, it checks by indent, right? So if we go back to our main file real quick.
Main file. Okay.
You see how everything in the while loop is indented once?
And the while loop is indented once. Okay.
And then it goes more if you have like if statements and stuff. So if you go back to your helper.
Okay.
You see how print is all the way at the outside? We want to make sure that's inside the function. So the same thing holds true for if statements and functions. So if we want it to be inside the function, we got to make sure it's within the indent. So you're going to want to indent that print once.
Okay.
And then it'll go. And then I think you had mentioned it. Oh, I see. So in check turn, you need a colon at the end of your function. And this is just Python's way of letting you know that you're done naming the function, basically. So everything past the colon is going to be the actual logic of the function. And then are you still getting any errors?
Name board is not defined.
Okay, so let's go back to our main real quick.
Okay.
Oh, wait, sorry. Go back to helper. I think I see.
Helper. Okay.
You see where you have that board minus? That should be equals.
Oh, that should be equals. Okay.
Yeah, this basically tells Python you're setting the variable board. And there you go.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Cool. Do you want to go ahead and throw in some numbers in there just to make sure everything's working?
Let's see. How do I do that again? It's just from
So you just go to your console. So right now you just have the if choice is equal to Q. So if you press Q inside the right hand side, right there, yeah, you see where it's like highlighted gray?
yes.
You can go ahead and click that and enter something. So you can put whatever you want. And if you press Q, the whole program runs, or you don't see that gray anymore. And because you can't enter anything because the program's done.
Oh, okay, got it.
All right, I got some new messages. Yeah, so if you come from C++, you have to use the brackets. Brackets are, they're nice in the sense that you have a little more freedom of how your functions look. Personally, I don't like them that much because it's easy to make your code look messy with brackets, but it's all preference.
But then you can collapse them.
That's true. But you can collapse in Python as well. It just depends on your environment. Anyways,
more control.
let's go back to our check for win function. So what is this basically doing is it's going through and we're going to split up our win conditions in 3 different cases. We can have someone gets 3 in a row horizontally like this. Oh, I'm not sharing anything. Let me go back and do that. All right, so we're gonna split up our win into 3 conditions. Someone can win horizontally from left to right. Someone can win vertically, so they go down, or somebody can get a diagonal, so 1, 5, 9, or 3, 5, 7. That's how you win tic-tac-toe. So what we're gonna go through and do is we're gonna go through and check all of the spots in our dictionary, and we're gonna check the horizontal ones and see if they're equal. So if we get 3 X's or 3 O's in a row, then we're gonna return true. And if we don't, we're gonna return false. So what this function is telling you is it's telling you if someone's won the game. If someone has won the game, it's gonna return true. If nobody's won yet, it will return false. And we can use that information to handle our game logic. So this is the horizontal case. This is just gonna check 1, 2, 3. This is just gonna check 4, 5, 6, and then 7, 8, 9. And when you make an if statement, so these are all individual conditions. It's gonna go ahead and check each of them individually. But to save some room, I kind of wanted to combine them all into one, since these are all kind of saying the same thing and that somebody won from the horizontal direction. So I'm going to use this or statement. And what this or tells us is that if any one of these 3 are true, then we'll return true.
What's the
So
backslash for?
the backslash is Python's way of letting you know that you want to go to the next line, but the new line of below it is still part of your code. So if I wanted to write this, it should technically look like this, but this will get really messy really quick because it's going to go all the way across the screen. So the backslash basically tells Python everything on the next line is still part of your code. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Cool. So you can think of all this as one line. The backslash is just telling us that we're going to continue that line on the next. And then we're going to just go ahead and do the same thing for the vertical cases. And we're going to use this else if. So the way it works is that it checks for 1. If it's not true, then it'll go to the next. And an important thing to note is that you can't win tic-tac-toe in the horizontal direction and the vertical direction. It can only be one or the other. So that's why we're going to use the else if statements. So if we had an if statement right here, then this means that either one of these could be true. While if we put the else if, this lets us know that it has to be this or this or this. It can't be both. And then, so we're going to do the same for the vertical and diagonal cases. If none of these are true, then it's going to go all the way down to the bottom at else. So you could think of this as like your default. Then we're just going to return false. Nobody's won the game yet. So do you have any questions about this function at all? Otherwise, I posted it in there, and that should be all the functions we're going to need. So we're getting close on time, but we're also almost done, so should be good. All right. So let's go ahead and import that function the same way we imported all of our other functions. We're going to read it in here. So from helper, we got to import our check for win function. And then at the end of our game loop, after we check if the person's put in an appropriate spot and filled it in, we are going to check if someone's won. So we're going to pass in our dictionary. That's what our input is here. I just call it dict. And then if somebody's won, then we're going to set our playing variable equal to false. And what happens next is it's going to go all the way back to the top. And it's going to say, all right, is playing still true? It's not? Okay, I guess we're done here. And it's going to go back to the bottom. So if we bring up our little diagram, if playing is false, then it's going to go, oh, no, okay, let's go back here. And we're going to continue on our instructions from everything past here. Does that make sense? If not, I will take your silence as a yes. All right, so last couple things we're going to do here is we are going to, I'm just going to go ahead and since we're wrapping up, I'll post it here and then I'll post it in Zoom as well. So what's going to happen is we are going to want to draw the board one more time, because up to here, we're updating the board after we draw it. So if we just end the game without doing this, then you're not going to, someone might win, but you're not going to see 3 X's in a row. So I could just show you what that looks like. If we run it, so press 1, C2, oops. So we'll show someone winning from the diagonal. And then our program ends, but as you can see, we haven't updated this. So that's why we want to draw it one more time. And if we do it now, and then we're going to check our complete variable. So if nobody won the game, this will be set to false, and none of this will run. But if someone did win the game, as you can see here, we set it to true. So we'll check if it's complete. If it is, then we're just going to check to see which turn it is. And whoever made the winning move on that turn, we're going to call them the winner. So if the turn with the winning move was an X, then we'll print that player 1 won. If it's not an X, then it has to be an O. So we'll print that player 2 won. And to check this, we already made a function called check turn. We're just going to go ahead and use it again. And then at the very end, we'll print thanks for playing, just to let the user know that they exited out of our program. So let's just go ahead and run this and test it. So if I do 1. Now if I put an A, it doesn't take it, it just throws it away. Now I do 2, we'll do 4, 5, and then 7. And player 1 wins. Now,
Case for when no one wins.
yeah, we could do that. So we'll see if I don't make like, did I make somebody win? No, okay. So if nobody wins, oh whoops, messed that up. Basically what's gonna happen is if nobody wins, then this part won't print and it's just gonna say thanks for playing. Because this complete will not be true. Oh, you know what though? You make a good point. There is a bug in this tic-tac-toe. What if we don't have a way to keep track of what happens if there's a tie? So this actually is going to go on forever. So that could be a homework for you. But if not, I'll just let you know how to do it. Basically, you want to do is you want to make sure that the churn is less than however many symbols we have. So we shouldn't have any more than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 churns. So if our churn variable is greater than 9, we can just do it right here. And we're going to set playing to false because nobody's won, but it's a tie. Okay.
Wait,
So,
can we make it print it's a tie?
yeah, you could. But to do that, you would probably need another variable. So you would probably want another variable called it's tie. You'd start it. So you do something like this.
Or you can just output it in the same print statement, same if statement, can't you?
You could do that too, actually. So if you want to print it here. The only thing about that is we're clearing the system every time we do it. So what's going to happen is we're going to print it here, but then the console is going to get cleared and you're not going to see it.
Ah, that's right.
So you'd have to do a little bit of a workaround to do that. But otherwise, we'll have to set another variable that keeps track of that. And if it's true, then we can go ahead and set it to true. And then I think that's pretty much the program. Does anyone have any outside questions? Ooh, I was able to do it in 50 minutes. All right.
Can you check my code again? I'm getting another syntax error.
Yeah, go ahead and share your screen. I'd be happy to look at it.
Sure, thanks.
All right. So let's see what's going on here. So we're going to go to the draw board, it looks like.
Here?
So it is in the So usually Python tells you where the problem is. So it says line 28. So if we go down,
Yeah.
it seems to be there.
Let's return false.
That looks correct.
20, line 26 then.
It could be before. What is it? Invalid character and identifier? Let's see what the error is here. Oh yeah, if anyone has the answer, feel free to post it in the chat. Maybe you can get to it faster than I can.
Is that supposed to be there?
What?
Else if.
Yeah, that should be elif. What is the problem here? I'm not quite sure. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put it in the Zoom chat one more time, and maybe you can try copy pasting it and see if that fixes it.
Okay.
If it doesn't, then it's probably not a problem with the function. It could be a problem with something else.
Okay. Let me try this out. Copy, paste it. Running. Okay, it's running.
Okay. Not sure what the problem was there. Maybe something just got mixed up.
Okay.
Cool. All right.
Thank you.
No
Wait,
problem.
I have a problem that can you help me with?
Yeah, go ahead and share your screen.
So when I do it, every time every time someone wins, it says player 2 always wins.
Can you go ahead and share your screen real quick?
You see it? Wait, can you see it?
Yeah, go ahead and go to your main file. See what the problem is. Go back to your helper. I know what the problem is. Go to check churn. You see how you're returning a little x instead of a capital X?
Oh,
So because when we check it, it's not capital X, it's little x. It's saying, okay, well, technically it's not the same. So it goes to this else statement right here. So if you do it again, it should work.
cool.
Cool. Yeah, so Python, you got to be very specific with your letters and variable names. Everything, capitalization and stuff like that does matter. Does anyone else have any other questions? Anyone need, or if anyone needs me to copy paste this, if they fell behind in the typing, I'd be happy to give it to you. And then I can show you how to save this. Some Python IDEs have ways to download your code, and this one does. So if you want to keep your little game, you can download it. It'll download into a zip folder for you. And then here's your files. So then if you open up your console, you have to have Python installed. But if you open up your console and run the main file, then you could do it there. Or you could just copy paste it into some IDE. We didn't really talk about IDEs here for you beginner programmers, but basically what an IDE is, it's just a nice little software that makes coding nice and easy for you. So if you wanted to code without an IDE, you would have to do it in this black screen right here, and this would get messy really quickly. So instead, we get something nice like this that colors everything. And
You're not sharing screen.
oh, as I was saying, if you wanted to code without an IDE, you'd have to code in this black screen, and that would get ugly really quickly. So instead, we like to use IDEs. They let us write, rather than putting in one instruction at a time, we can write a list of instructions, and then we can go ahead and color code everything, make sure everything's working correctly, stuff like that. So it just makes life a little easier.
Just use Notepad with a compiler.
There you go. For the true programmers out there. And then do I have any other questions?
One last one, sorry.
No problem.
When I try running the program, I'm getting another error. So let me share my screen and hopefully you can find it.
Let's see. Check churn is not defined. Okay, so you're gonna want to go up to top of your main. You see how from helper we have import draw board.
Yes.
So this tells Python, okay, go into helper.py, that file, and grab the function draw board. Now we have couple other functions in helper. We have check churn and we have check for win. So just like we told Python, we wanted to grab our draw board function. We needed to tell Python to grab the other ones as well. So you just do a comma and then put the name of the functions. You don't need that import.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Yeah, just like that.
And the last one was win.
Check for win, I think. Yeah. And then it should work after that, and you should have your nice little tic-tac-toe game. Any other questions or debugging?
Is there a way to say this is like a text file?
As a text file?
I just copy and pasted it.
You can just copy paste it. Like you can open up Notepad. Let me share my screen again. You can open up Notepad. Every computer has it or some equivalent of it. And you just Control A and that'll copy everything. And then you go and Control V it in, and there you go. You can save it as whatever you want. Or you could just go to download and you get the .py files, but you can actually open those .py files in Notepad and it'll look exactly the same.
Oh.
Cool, cool. Do I have any other questions? If not, it is almost 5 o'clock, so we will probably wrap